We've got a very nice sunny morning here in late August 2022. About 6 months ago, I put a video on this channel called Black Gum Winter Identification, and I would like to supplement that and add to that. And we're going to do black gum. We're going to study the foliage today. We're going to study the fruits if we can find some. Sometimes you find them on the ground. Sometimes you can find a tree where they're hanging down low enough you can see them. And we'll see if we can find some. And we're going to be looking at several different black gum trees. That's a tree where the foliage varies a lot. Bark doesn't vary that much. The form of the tree doesn't vary a lot, but the foliage does in size and shape. And we're going to be taking a little hike around what's called Hidden Lake. This is on the Connecticut-Rhode Island border, on the Rhode Island side of that border. And on the border of Washington County, Rhode Island, and New London County, Connecticut. And it looks like the lake is down a few feet from the extended drought in the summer of 2022. And despite having 4 to 5 inches of rain this week from several rounds of thunderstorms, it takes a while for these wetlands to come back up. There's so many bogs in this area. It takes a while for those to fill back up with water, to the point where they'll release the water and fill up the streams. So that's a good thing during a dry spell, because they often hold their water for much longer than areas that don't have bogs. But there was spectacular color last year on the black gum trees around this lake. We can hike around the whole lake. It's not that big of a lake. It takes about an hour to go around it. Probably a half hour if I walked fast. But there's lots of black gum in the area around this lake that's easy to see, and it put on a great fall display last year in late September, early October. And I'd like to study it while it's still green, and we'll probably come back here or a similar place in a few weeks and take another look at these black gum trees as they put on their fall display of scarlet colors. Boy, it sure is lush back here with all this sweet pepper bush or clethra and some mountain laurel, and just a great sensory experience back in these woods, especially after it rains. The smells come out, and I don't know if we're going to find any black gum fruits today. Here's our clethra or sweet pepper bush finishing up its blooming. It blooms for over a month usually, from the first to the last blooms. Often grows in the same kind of habitat as the black gum does in this part of the country, at least. Black gum in this area in southeast New England is mostly in the wetlands, areas with wet soil or damp soil. Here's a high bush blueberry here, which often grows in the same type of habitat as the black gum. And I'm looking at this right now because this is about the size and color of the fruits of a black gum tree. And usually the birds beat me to the berries when I go out hiking. But we got several left on this bush here, so we'll give them a try. But that's what we're going to be looking for on these black gum trees as we hike around Hidden Pond today. And when studying the black gum last winter, I actually brought my carpenter's square along with me to drive home the point that many of the branches, especially the younger branches on these black gum trees, come off the main branch at a 90-degree angle or close to a 90-degree angle. And in this case, we've got some leaves from this black gum tree that went up. Did a little arching here, which made it easy to get these down at the level where we can make a video. So we got a branch here that originally came off at a 90-degree angle, then got a little twisted around. So obviously that varies a lot from branch to branch. Mother Nature makes what she wants out of these. You can see these smaller branches here are coming off at a 90-degree angle here. So that rule of thumb still applies in a lot of cases. And at the end of these smaller branches here, we have a whole whirl or array of leaves coming off from one point. And most of the ones that are in the shade here are no longer than my index finger, maybe 1 to 2 inches long. Many of them have a little point at the end. I've seen specimens where that's not the case, so we'll keep adding to this list. Like I said, there's a lot of variability, but most of the ones growing on this branch are no more than 2 inches long. If we can find one that's getting a little bit more sun, I think we'll see how much larger they can get. I know I've seen some in ridgetop locations where the leaves were much larger, to the point where I wasn't even sure if it was a black gum. This guy here is about 3 inches long, and just starting to give us a hint as to what it can look like in a few weeks. A lot of these plants were under extreme stress until this week, with almost no rain in July and August. So they may be actually starting to turn a little bit earlier. But obviously these leaves are still wet from yesterday's rains. This is early morning. But we'll add to this video series as time allows, and we will see that these leaves often have a luster or a shine to them even when they're not wet. But real elegant way it comes off the end of that branch. I've got 1, 2, 3, it looks like 5 leaves coming off the end of this branch, and 5 coming off the end of this one, and 4 coming off the end of this one, and we could probably come up with an average, I'm sure. So reminds me of some of the magnolia trees that I've recorded in the past. The umbrella magnolia comes off in whorls like this, but the leaves are much larger. Let's continue our walk here. It's a beautiful place, and see if we can find more examples of the leaves of these sweet gum or black gum trees. Alrighty, well, after going almost all the way around Hidden Lake here, I found the perfect tree for working on this lesson. And the fact that the water's down a couple feet is making it easier for me to access this tree, which is growing on the shoreline when the water levels are higher. It's got all these crooked branches coming off at kind of a 90-degree angle. At least that's how they start, and then Mother Nature does what she does. And we got plenty of them hanging over where the pond would be at higher levels for us to get a real good look at these guys. So let's see what we got here. Where this tree is growing quickly, we're not finding that cluster of leaves, but just one leaf here, about 3 inches long, and then another leaf about 3 inches long, staggered along the branch. So what I saw earlier is still showing up on some of these branches. But it appears that, at least on the new growth, where the branch is growing straight out and not out on a little spur, that we're only getting one leaf at a time, and they're quite a bit larger. And these have dried off enough now. You can see the luster or the shine on that leaf. It's no longer wet, but it does shine more than a lot of the other species of trees that we've studied. You can see this still has a point on the end, but it's not as pronounced as that last specimen we looked at. Some of these are actually oval at the end, or almost oval. Like this guy right here. Almost no noticeable point on this particular leaf right here. So a lot of variability in how much point is at the end and how much it flares out. A lot of variability in the size and the pattern at which they come off the branch. But one thing we can count on is these trees having this 90-degree branching that we studied in the winter. Around here we can count on them growing where the soil is moist. Not always waterlogged, but definitely moist. But I have found it in locations where it's growing in drier soils on ridge tops as well. So kind of like the red maple, it can grow in a lot of different places. The fact this is a larger tree, old enough to produce fruits, and it has branches hanging down that we can study, I have found some fruits. And here's a fruit that's still green, but it is the size of that blueberry we looked at a few minutes ago. So blueberry sized fruit. This one's still green in late August. We've got a pair of them over here that are still green. Again, blueberry sized fruit. And a whole bunch of them over here where some of the leaves have fallen off already. They're easy to see. So sometimes they're coming in twos, sometimes they're coming in ones off the branch. You can see that plainly here. There we go. Again, those are about the size of a blueberry. I think I saw one a minute ago that actually had turned that blue color, or started to. Matter of fact, here's one right here. So it's just starting to get that blueberry color, and in a few weeks they will all have that color. Edibility, I haven't studied up on yet, but we'll add that to this lesson when we get to the fall part of this lesson where we're looking at the colors. I'll read up on that. I know the birds eat them. There we go. Well, what a great place to study these trees. I've got a few more in mind that I'm going to record. They're growing on a hillside that has a seep in it. So the water seeps out, the soil's moist, but the leaves are quite a bit larger on that tree that I found a few weeks ago. We're going to add that to this lesson and then pick up where we left off in a few weeks when these get their spectacular fall color. And after leaving Hidden Lake that day in late August, I had a chance to do some hiking on the Tri-Town Trail, which is near the village of Poquatanic in New London County, Connecticut. And this is a new trail, just a few years old. It's on a hillside here with a lot of seeps. So the black gum has found plenty of moist soil to keep it happy on this hillside. And at least in this part of New England, you don't see it normally growing on the hillsides. It's in the depressions, it's in the lowlands, on the borders of wetlands, and in swamps. So it kind of caught me by surprise, but I have seen it on drier locations in the central and southern Appalachians quite commonly, and wasn't even sure if it was black gum because it looked a lot like the sourwood and the sassafras. At least the bark and the leaves kind of resembled it. And in those locations the leaves get bigger. And on this hillside, it appears they've gotten bigger too. At least the ones I've found so far are quite a bit larger than some of the ones we found around Hidden Lake. And this is now early October. We're getting some early fall color right now, but look at the size of this one black gum leaf that has fallen down from the windstorms. It's as big as that dollar bill. And a good 4 or 5 inches long, and look how pointy the end is there. So that looks a lot like some of the other trees I put on this channel, but it doesn't look a lot like some of these other black gum leaves that are at the bottom of the screen here, which are much shorter and have almost a blunt or a rounded tip here. It's not pointy, hardly pointy at all. So a lot of variability in the leaves of black gum trees, especially if they get out of those wetland habitats and into a place where the soil's a little better drained. Perhaps they can grow a little better without having the challenges of growing in constantly wet soils. But here's some pennies for scale. Here's the dollar bill for scale. And we got a clump of these black gum trees coming up this hillside from the valley. Seem to be quite content here. This is a fairly moist environment here. We've got a larger black gum right in the foreground here. I didn't have any of these spice bushes to use around Hidden Lake. At least I wasn't looking at any that day. But boy, this spice bush leaf Really looks a lot like a black gum leaf. It certainly has similar veins, a similar vein pattern. There's our vein pattern on this spice bush with that pointy tip. These have a more consistent shape than the black gum, which varies a lot, as I just showed. So most of these spice bush leaves do have that pointy tip. They're not as shiny as the black gum leaves, and they get this beautiful red berry in the fall, when this a black gum of this size would never have fruits on a smaller tree like this. So I have put spice bush on this channel as an understory tree for that reason. It looks like an understory tree, it grows like an understory tree. I'm not sure if the botanists consider it a tree or a shrub. The common name says bush. It looks a lot like an understory tree. That's what I'm going to call it. And the leaves are similar to that of the black gum, with similar veins, but not quite as shiny. And it often or always grows in moist soils, like this black gum can grow in. One more black gum right here. There's still got a few leaves attached that we can study. So it's a smaller tree growing on this hillside. With a leaf about as big as that dollar bill that I showed just a minute ago. And quite a few of those leaves above me as well. And this is the tree that caught my attention at the same time I was making those videos out at Hidden Lake, so I thought I'd include it on this set. As you can see, fall is here. It feels like fall. It's starting to look like fall. We're going to take a tour of some other parks in this area and start to really soak in the beauty of these black gum trees as they attain that beautiful crimson and gold color, like these ones are already starting to illustrate. And we'll continue our study of the black gum with its fall foliage. We're about a mile from where I started this lesson at Hidden Lake. That's on the Rhode Island side of the border, and we're on the Connecticut side of the Rhode Island border right now along the Narragansett Trail. We're only about a mile from there though. Got some, I believe this is New England aster, growing wild in the crack of this ledge here. Also got some dwarf pitch pine here. It's in a scrub form. And some scrub oak, or bare oak if you want to call it that. Bare oak is what I called it on this channel. Growing out of the cracks of this rock too. This is an unnamed wetland, at least unnamed on any of the maps I have. And I found quite a bit of black gum with some nice foliage to study, and there's a lot of rocks around here we can climb up on to look at it up close without having to climb the tree or find a tree that's really small or leaning over. So it's a real interesting marsh here. Probably more of a bog if you consider it's got a lot of acid-loving plants growing in it. This used to have a lot of Atlantic white cedar, but the beavers raised the water table a couple feet and it's all been drowned out except for a couple. But it'll probably be back. The seeds, if there are any left, will perch on a place that isn't so soggy and start over again. That's a slow growing tree, so that may take a while. Meanwhile, we've got all kinds of fall colors to admire here, including the black gum. We've got some high bush blueberry all around this pond. We've got plenty of red maple as well. And even some of that bare oak is getting a nice maroon color on some of the plants. We're going to concentrate on the black gum, but if there's something real pretty along the way, we're going to look at it too. And we'll keep admiring these oaks and maples. They're putting on quite a display in addition to the black gum, which is more common as this bog or marsh here pinches out to a narrower spot. It becomes more common down here, and there's some interesting places we can climb up to look at it. This is a little side trail off the Narragansett Trail, but it's pretty obvious from the Narragansett Trail that there is a trail back here to all these rock formations, which are quite interesting and pretty easy to find your way around back here. Eventually you run into marsh and you can't go any further. And here's our first black gum. Boy. We got good lighting today. Sometimes these overcast days just make for better conditions for really getting the lighting just right. So there's our whirl of leaves that we looked at a few weeks ago. They don't all come out from the same spot on the branch, but they're close together. Textbook says that it's crowded, and I would agree. And the one that we looked at Hidden Lake that was growing out over the water, or where there used to be water, was less crowded because it was growing faster. And that's the case with this branch here too. There's a little bit more room out here. Let's just keep looking at the beautiful colors here, and there's plenty more trees along this trail we can look at. We can look up at them, we can look through them. And this one is just getting started on the first week of October. And just a few steps down here. These are small trees at this point, so they're easier to enjoy at a lower height. And again, they have that horizontal branching. It comes out at 90-degree angle. Often comes out at 90-degree angle. And just look how pretty that is. And this little spur trail to those ledges and overlooks of the marsh or bog continues back to the main Narragansett Trail, which has a lighter blue blaze on it. So these red maples are pretty common along the shore of this marsh as well. And plenty of rock ledge back here, as you've seen. And that's going to make it easier to see the top of one of these black gums. I found this a little earlier today on my way out here, and we can scramble up this rock ledge. Got to cross this little bridge, scramble up a little rock ledge, and get a good look at the top of one of these trees and put the wraps on this lesson. There's plenty of these crevasses or cracks in the ledges around here. One a little further down the trail, it's nicknamed Dinosaur Caves. You can actually crawl inside it for quite a distance. Okay, and here's our black gum. It's growing in the moist soil between these ledges. We're up about 25-30 feet here. We can really look at this fall foliage. And keep an eye out for some berries if there's any left. Boy, what a blaze orange, turning crimson. I'm sure this is just going to get better with time. And that crimson color is even more apparent on these upper branches. Wow, what a neat tree. And yes, the red maple towering above it is just as bright, if not brighter. So what a great time of year to come out. It looks like we're going to have a good fall. A lot of these trees were under stress for a lot of the growing season, because of almost no rainfall in May, June, and July, and most of August. But Mother Nature's made up for it. We've had over 10 inches in September, or had over 10 inches in September in many areas in southeast New England. So still not a lot of water coming down these streams. These marshes and bogs will soak up gallons and gallons of water and hold it, and then slowly release it. So that's good during a drought year because it keeps the streams flowing for many weeks even after the rains have ceased. Well, what an amazing tree here. Got all different layers, all different colors, and yes, most of these leaves are smaller than the ones we just looked at on the Tri-Town Trail, and they're not as pointy. There's a couple that have points. Some have a little bit of a point. Some don't have any. So there's our variability in size and shape, and a lot of beautiful color to be had here. Before I finally put the final wraps on this lesson, I mentioned that the fruits turned a purple color. I don't see any on this. I'm not sure if I'm going to find any, but they are edible but not palatable. So you could eat them, they won't hurt you, but they're bitter, they're sour, and there's a small stone inside them, so there isn't a whole lot of flesh around it for your nutritional value, or to sustain yourself in a wilderness situation, a survival situation. But the birds love them, the birds eat them, and when the birds pass them through, we've got seeds for the next generation of black gums. So amazing tree, and we'll try to do more with it. If I can get back down in the central Appalachians, it grows on the ridgetops there and not around here, and I'd like to do more with it at that point, but that may be something I wouldn't have time to do right now.